Good morning, church. Good afternoon, church. How you all doing? That's good. It's good. It's good to see you all. So today, I'm preaching. And you might be thinking, well, that's obvious, because you're standing up there and you've been introduced as today's preacher. Now, so, the topic of today's sermon is the privilege of prayer. Now, how many of you think prayer is a privilege? Just by a show of hands. Is prayer a privilege? You think prayer is a privilege? Okay, so some hands not. Yeah, okay, cool. So, as our sister beautifully read, in Daniel chapter 2, King Nebuchadnezzar has a dream. King Nebuchadnezzar has a dream. Now, any of you ever had a dream? I'm sure you've all had dreams before, haven't you? You've all had dreams, right? And some good dreams, some dreams not so nice, right? And some dreams that mean nothing. Some dreams you dreamt it because you fell asleep with the television on and you dreamt something, isn't it? It happens, right? But this dream troubled King Nebuchadnezzar. It troubled him, right? It troubled him. But before we get to that, why are we in Babylon? Because he's the king of Babylon and we're here. Why are we here in Babylon? We're here in Babylon because after God delivered his people from bondage in Egypt, he took them to the promised land, Israel. But his people in Israel were rebellious. They did their own thing. They wouldn't listen to God. God would send them a prophet, and they were like, no, we're not going to listen. And so God allowed King Nebuchadnezzar to defeat Israel and take a whole bunch of them as exiles to Babylon. And so when we find, and among those exiles was Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So when we arrive in Daniel chapter 3, in the book of Daniel, this is what Daniel experiences while he's in Babylon. So, King Nebuchadnezzar has a dream, and the dream troubles him. Your dream troubles him. And I'm sure like any of you, if you have a dream that troubles you, you kind of want to know what it means, right? You know, you had a dream that troubles you, you want to know the interpretation of the dream. So he does something which I thought is very smart, which I think a lot more people should do, right? So he says to his magicians, sorcerers, wizards, he gathers them around, because obviously, if you're a sorcerer or a magician or a wizard, you've been showing some tricks. You've been showing some tricks, something impressive, you know what I mean? Maybe you made a rabbit, disappear in a hat. So he puts them together and said, I've had a dream. And they say, long live the king. Long live the king. Tell us your dream, and we will tell you the interpretation. And the king does something which is really smart, which I think more people should do, yeah? Now, I remember a few years ago, I received something, a leaflet, in my letterbox. Like, do you guys, is this the problem in North London where you always get people putting leaflets in your letterbox? Like, all the time, pizza, chicken and chips, all the time, like, every day. How many leaflets are there in Edmonton? So anyway, I had a leaflet in my letterbox, and it said, astrologer can tell you information about your life, your future, your health, your finances. And I looked at it, I thought, oh, okay, and I put it in the bin. Right? But some people don't put it in the bin. Some people go to these people for information. They want to know about their future. They want to know about their life, how things are going to turn out for them. Now, when you go to these people, what normally happens is you go to a dark room. I've seen it in documentaries. You go, there's a dark room, there's some bells, they have a hat, there's some smoke, and there's some dim lighting. And then they might say to you something like, now this technique is called code reading. So they might say, there is a man in your family. Isn't there a man in everyone's family? But, there's a man in your family. Yes, there is. And people normally go to these people when they're desperate. Zion. So the thing is, when you're desperate, you're less likely to think things through. So you hear, I sense there's a man in your family. Yes, there is. Okay, a name, the letter A. No, that's not it. And so you say, no, that's not his name. B. No. C. No. D. We are going to go for the alphabet. Until they say, H. Yes, H. Harry. Yes, Harry. Yes, there's a man in your family called Harry. How did you know this? Right? And then you go back and forth. And so they're giving you revelation when it's really, they're just bouncing off what you're saying to them. Understand? And they're just, going with the odds. The man in your family, he's alive. He has a job. He drives a car. He's left-handed. You know what I mean? 50-50 guesses that you guide them. And at the end, they're going to have a unique piece of information. Unique, which you need to know, which is important. Normally surrounding death or health, but you need to know this piece of information. And you want to know it, right? Because I've told you that the man in your family called Harry, there's information about him that pertains to your future. And you need to know, don't you? Yes, you want to know. So £200 will unlock the information. So it's going to get down to some money. And many people have lost money, have given away loads of money to these charlatans because they were desperate and in need of answers. But King Nebuchadnezzar was in need of answers because he had a dream that troubled him. But he says, not only do I want the interpretation, but I would like you to tell me what the dream was in the first place. Now, this might sound like an unreasonable request. And they say that. They say, King, big man, boss, nobody has ever asked anything like this. Like, you don't ask them things there. You tell us the dream, we'll tell you the meaning. He said, nah, you're going to lie to me. Because if I tell you the dream, you can tell me what you like. And furthermore, if you have power to interpret dreams, why don't you have power to reveal what the dream is? So he says, nope, I need answers now. And they're like, boss, I know I put a rabbit out of a hat, but beyond me. So he says, cool, well, I'm going to kill all of you and your families, you know? Now, Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they're not there, but they're part of the royal court. So they're going to die too. So when this news comes to Daniel, the news comes to him and he says, okay, tell the king we just need some time. I can find out the interpretation. Then he goes to his friends. He goes to his friends and he says to them, let's pray to God for the interpretation of the dream. And the Bible says that night, God revealed to Daniel the interpretation of the dream. So then he goes to the king and says, King Nebuchadnezzar, I can tell you what your dream means. Well, first of all, the king says, can you tell me what your dream means? And Daniel says, well, your enchantress can't, your wizards can't, your sorcerers can't, even I can't. But there is a God in heaven. There is a God in heaven. You see, when we say prayer is a privilege, because the long and short of it is this, everybody prays. But it's only a privilege if you are praying to the God in heaven. And the God in heaven only listens if you are in covenant relationship with him. That's what makes prayer a privilege. So Daniel says, there is a God in heaven who can tell you what you dreamt and what it means. Because if you have a dream and you come to me, I can tell you whatever I like. You know, you had a dream, there was a tree chasing you, you made a left, the tree made a left, you made a right, the tree made a right, the tree caught you, the tree grabbed you, the tree hugged you. What does it mean? It means you should be a carpenter. I just made it up. But if I come and tell you what the dream was before you tell me, you have confidence that it's been revealed to me, right? Same thing. So Daniel says, God has revealed what the dream means. Because Daniel knows that there is a God in heaven. And because Daniel has a relationship with the God in heaven, he knows the privilege of communion with the God in heaven. Because when you do not have a relationship with the God in heaven, you might pray, but you're just praying. You're just talking to the sky. And that's why in those cases, you'll pray to whoever will get you answers. You need a job? Hey, your Christian friend, yeah, hey, pray to Jesus for me. Your Muslim friend, hey, try Muhammad, try Krishna. Whoever can get it done. Because you're here after results. But when you know the God of heaven and you're in covenant relationship with the God of heaven, your prayer springs from a relationship with the God of heaven. You're not just after results, because you have a two-way communication with the God of heaven. You speak, he listens. He speaks, you listen. But when it's about results, it's one way. Like when I go to the vending machine, I see a Kit Kat. I want the Kit Kat. And so I have 50p, inflation, £10, put it in the machine, and I get a Kit Kat. I don't care about that vending machine other than what it can give me. That's the only thing I want from that vending machine, what it can give me. And for a lot of people, that's all they care for prayer, what it can give them. They want results and results alone. And when results is all you're after, you will never know the privilege of the relationship with the God of heaven. You will never know the privilege of speaking to him, of hearing him speak to you. You will never know that privilege. You are after results. And your prayer life will be 50-50. Your prayer life will be deep, deep frustration. Because it's only about what you can get, what you can have. What you don't have, that's what your prayer life looks like. And that's why it's not a privilege. Quite frankly, it's frustrating. Because there's many things you prayed about and you're not getting, and quite frankly, you're tired. And some of us dare to give God a deadline. Some of us really, like, God, I've been praying about this thing for 10 years, and I'm giving you to the 31st of December, 2023. And if you don't come through, you will find me on the 1st of January, 2024, Allah Akbar. I will say Allah Akbar, I am now a Muslim. Because I tried the Jesus thing. I will have a hat, you see me, Assalamu alaikum. Lord, that's me now. Why? 10 years, every day I'm in church, praying, serving. I'm doing all this thing. No, God can't even answer one prayer for a bottle of Coke. I'm not having it, mate. I'm not having it. Allah Akbar, you see me. Hat, everything. That's me now. We do that because we are after results, not a relationship. But when you have a relationship, when you know God, when God knows you, when you talk to God, when God talks to you, that privilege, that's the kind of privilege when in Daniel chapter 3 they tried to outlaw prayer with the penalty of death, Daniel continued to pray. Because that's how important his communion with God was. He valued the relationship. He valued the communion he had with God. That was a privilege he was willing to die for. If he was only after God for what he can get, for what he doesn't have, then listen, I ain't trying to die. Prayer is outlawed. I'm going to go somewhere else for these results. But he cared about his relationship with God. We have to ask ourselves, is our walk with the Lord, is our relationship with God our top priority? Is that the most important thing that we are caring about? Because we all have needs, and there's nothing wrong with having needs. There's nothing wrong with bringing needs and concerns to God. God invites us to bring our needs and concerns to him. But if the only time we want to have interaction with God is when we have problems, then that says we are after things and not after God. And nobody wants that. None of you, come on, you guys, you might have had people in your life where the moment you see their name come up on your phone, you know they need something. You know them ones, isn't it? The moment you look, Barry, yeah, he needs a tenner. And you don't hear from him until he needs the next thing. You don't feel that person values the relationship you have. They're after you for the things that they can get. But prayer is a privilege because the God of heaven invites you into communion. He invites you to know him and to be known by him. And as a result of that, prayer becomes a privilege. And you would have things in your life which are unanswered, which you're waiting for. But those are not ultimate things for you because the ultimate thing you already have. And you know that because you have a relationship, you know that God knows what you need, and you know that he can give it to you. So you have to reason that if he hasn't done it yet, he must have a good reason. He must, and you know he has your best interest at heart. He must have a good reason why the very thing I'm praying for, which in my mind I need, I can't see any reason why I wouldn't need it. God, you're not doing it, but we have a relationship and I trust you. So I know if you haven't given it to me, you must have a reason. I've heard it said that at the end of this life, we're going to look back and we would want our prayers, every single prayer request that you have, yeah? You would want it answered the same way God would answer it if you knew everything God knows. So if God gave you all the information that he knows about your prayer request, how he's answering it, how long he's taken is exactly how you'd want him to do it. But the reason why there is difficulty in the waiting is because you don't fully know all the things that he knows about this prayer request. And you would have known there's times in your life where you pray for something, you look back and you're like, thank God I didn't get that. Thank the Lord he didn't answer that. You can testify, right? That's me. You pray, you think, whoa, that was a dodged bullet that I didn't get what I wanted at that time. So when when you're in relationship, waiting isn't always easy, but it's bearable. It's not frustrating. It doesn't make you angry at God because you trust in his timings. You trust that he really has your best interest at heart. Now, in Numbers chapter 12, Miriam and Aaron, they weren't happy with Moses because Moses went and got a foreign wife. And so they're talking among themselves, and they're like, who does Moses think he is? Does he think he's the only one who God speaks to? Now, bear in mind, Moses ain't around. So imagine me and William when in William's office. And for those who don't know, Pastor William is the guy at the back there with the black hair. He's from Argentina. but he has an American accent. Why? And so, imagine me and William were in his office and who does Stephen think he is? Does he think he's the only one that God speaks to? So that's the kind of conversation Miriam and Aaron are having about Moses. Then God says, Miriam, Aaron, Moses, come out to the tent of meeting. So God says, Isaac, Stephen, William, prayer chapel. When they get outside, God says, Miriam and Aaron, come forward, in. And obviously Moses has to wait outside. So they must be thinking, proof that God speaks to me too. So then they get there. Now let me show you what God said to them when they got there. So this is Numbers chapter 12. So when they get there, obviously after they were bad-mouthing Moses, this is what God has to say to them. God says to them, now hear what I have to say. When there are prophets among you, I reveal myself to them in visions and speak to them in dreams. It is different when I speak with my servant Moses. I have put him in charge of all the people of Israel. So I speak to him face to face, clearly, not in riddles. He has even seen my form. How dare you speak against my servant Moses? Does it not sound like Moses has a privilege with God? That he has a deep connection that them two don't have? Prayer can become deeply meaningful when you make knowing God more the highest priority. It becomes deep, it takes on all new meaning when, yes, you want what you want, you have the needs you have, and there's nothing wrong with having those needs. But what you want most is to know God more. It's to really know him and be known by him. To really understand his heart and his mind. To really have an intimacy when you speak, you know he hears. When he speaks, you listen. It dynamically changes your life. Because Daniel was minding his own business, him and his friends. He doesn't even know what's happening in the court. And next thing he hears, we're about to die. Now, really think about it. When you get bad news, when you get unexpected news, what normally happens? Nobody's panic, innit? Ah, caramba, you start spinning. The sky is falling. And your life is not even in danger. And you're spinning. Daniel's life was in danger, and he said, okay, I'm going to take this to God. Because he knows the God of heaven. Prayer is a deep privilege when you have the privilege of a relationship with God. That whatever comes your way, no matter what difficulties come, like, I wasn't expecting that. I'm going to take it to God. And I was talking to God yesterday. I was talking to him earlier today. So it's not like I come running when I need something. I'm in fellowship. I enjoy my communion with God. That's the highest privilege. You enjoy your communion with God. And like any conversation, needs come up, things come up. But you'll find when you're only about results, you want God to listen when you speak. But when God tells you to do something, nah, you're deaf. Me no speak no English. Is that how you say it in me no speak no English? Or no English no plaza. I don't know what it is, but you get what I mean. Instead, all of a sudden, you don't know English. When God is communicating to you clearly. Clearly, some of you are here. God has said to you clearly, leave the job. Leave the job. You know, God says, leave the job. 2 years later, you're still there. Leave the job. God says, speak to this person about the faith, this person in your workplace. Speak to them. Or pray for this person. You're finding reasons not to do it. But when you speak, you want God to act just like that. You have to value the privilege of knowing God. And from that privilege, you will find a prayer life that is vibrant, that is life-changing, that not only changes you, but it changes and impacts those around you. Because Daniel wasn't the only one who benefited from the king saying, your God is the greatest. Daniel didn't just save his own life. He saved the life of everyone else who was in the king's court. Because God has rescued you, has rescued us, so that he might use us to rescue others. You can go after results and have a very frustrating prayer life and find prayer to be one of the most frustrating things that you encounter. Or you can go after God's heart and a relationship and find the joy that comes from that. You find the joy that comes from that, and you will have a communion with God that is life-changing, not just for you, but for those around you. And your prayer life will take on new meaning. And so when problems come, unexpected, as difficult as they seem, you'll be like, that's wild. But there is a God in heaven. Did not see that coming. But there is a God in heaven. If you do not have a relationship with the God in heaven, how can you trust him with the biggest issues of your life? You're scrambling. You're going to who will answer. Loads of people going from church to church, prophet to prophet. Some people, they're on their 10th church and their 15th prophet. Like, soon you're going to run out of prophets. You're going to have to become the prophet. Like, after you run out of prophets and churches, you become the prophet and you start a church because, boy, there's not enough prophets to go around. You have to first know the privilege of knowing God. And the only way to have the privilege of knowing God is through his son, Jesus Christ. So if you're here today and you have not made a decision to follow Jesus, you have not accepted his redemptive work on the cross for your sins, you can make that decision today. Because the best time to follow Jesus was, is, and will always be right now. There is never a better time to follow Jesus than right now. So let's bow our heads. And with all our heads bowed, if you're here today and you haven't made a decision to follow Jesus, but you would like to say, I want to know God. And I know the only way to know God is to put my faith in Jesus. Because Jesus has made a way for me to have a relationship with the God of heaven. And if that's something you want to do today, as all heads are bowed, just put your hands up, raise your hand, and I'll pray for you. If you want to know the God of heaven.